Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Behind me is my 2.0 turbo Sandrail. For the past year, I've been building this thing. It is a fully custom build. Pretty much nothing about this car is either stock or was originally there. This thing is a mix of Volkswagen, Ford, and a couple other random parts. The purpose of this video is to showcase all of my mistakes. This is my very first real big build, and I made a lot of mistakes. I messed up pretty much at every point of this, and the purpose of this video is for you guys to learn from my mistakes. I wasted a lot of money, time, effort, and I made a ton of mistakes. So this video is for you guys to learn from it. These are the 5 major mistakes that I made when building my custom Sandrail. This is gonna apply to pretty much any build, regardless of if you're doing off-road, a car, Sandrail, bike, pretty much anything in this realm, this video is gonna cover, and I got you. Maybe you're thinking about starting a project, you already started one, or you're halfway through it. Regardless, these tips are gonna help you out. This will help you to better understand your own build, and these are all things I will definitely be doing next time. I hope this helps you guys to better understand what to expect. Now, a lot of these mistakes that I made are going to vary in intensity for your case, depending on how big your build is, how deep you're getting into it. Is it gonna be a fully custom build like this one is, or you just throw in a couple exhaust pieces on your car? Regardless, they're all gonna be able to help you, but some of these tips are going to apply more so depending on how deep your build is. Now, this first mistake that I made was I completely underestimated the amount of behind the scenes research it would take to complete my build. Your build, especially at first, is gonna require a ton of behind the scenes research, knowledge that you don't currently have, and you're gonna need to figure out where to find that knowledge. How common is the car that you're building? For example, when I used to have a Mustang, I could find tons and tons and tons of aftermarket support, YouTube videos, other things like that, telling me exactly how to take off, put on, and do whatever I wanted to my build. One of the websites I would buy all my parts from, AmericanMuscle.com, they had specific video instructions for every part I bought when I was modifying that car. So it made it extremely easy. Do you have that kind of aftermarket support when you're modifying your car? Or is it something that's uncommon? Or is it custom? Is it something you're gonna have to figure out on your own? Those are all questions that you need to answer before you get started on your build. How are you gonna do this? Do you have help? This build that I'm doing would not be possible without the tremendous help of my friends, their knowledge, and just their day-to-day help in the build. It can be something as simple as helping you move the transmission out or back in, handing you a bolt while you're underneath the car, or being a master mechanic. My friends have so much knowledge that I don't have, so they have been the only reason that this build has even left the ground. A lot of stuff can be found on places like forums, YouTube videos, and specific companies that make the individual part that you need. For example, this plate right here, this is a transfer plate. We are putting a Ford motor on a Volkswagen transmission. Basically, those don't just butt up correctly from the factory. They're obviously 2 different manufacturers, so we had to get this custom plate built from this company that specifically does this. Is there a company that maybe specifically solves a problem that you need to in your build? Those are all questions you really have to answer. You need to understand not only what you are doing, but how you're doing it. Everything is all gonna require a ton of behind the scenes research, just giving you a heads up. The next big mistake that I made was I was not building this car in the proper area and with the proper tools. You really have to understand where you're gonna be doing this. Are you doing this at your home garage? Do you have a shop you can do it at? If something happens and you have to stop in the middle of your build because you are waiting on a part or something broke, can you leave everything there? Or are you gonna be on a strict time frame to get out of that specific location? I would really, really recommend doing your build somewhere where you have a lot of benefits. For example, this shop. It's 10:30 at night and I can film, I can see everything because it has good lighting. If I was doing this outside, I would be cut off because I can't see anything. It makes it so much easier to build a car when you're doing it in the right environment.
And depending on how intense your build, you're gonna need some specialty tools. Do you have some of the specialty tools required? Are you doing this on a lift or on jacks? Or do you have an engine hoist or an engine stand? Obviously, a lot of these things like power tools can make the build go so much faster, but it's really, really good to understand where you're doing this build. Does it have the proper facilities and items that you're gonna need? And is there anything you need to get?
The next mistake that I was making is I was not taking the time to understand fitment and how everything works together. For this example, I'm gonna use this pedal system right here. This is a pedal system that we purchased because after a lot of behind the scenes research, we decided that it was gonna be a good fit for us and our build. There was a lot of questions that we had to answer. And with a build, especially a custom build, when you don't have the luxury of typing in your part online and seeing if it's gonna fit on your car and with the parts you have, we had to answer a lot of those questions ourselves. For example, this pedal box, how is it gonna mount up? Are we gonna weld it? Is it aluminum or is it steel? Because you can't really weld aluminum to steel very good. If not, are we gonna screw it in? Okay, does it come with the hardware? Do we need to buy hardware? If so, is it the right size? Is this pedal system gonna support the different types of braking, clutch, and throttle that we're gonna be using? We're gonna be using the hydraulic brakes, but our throttle is gonna be a drive-by cable, not wire. Okay, does this support that? And the drive-by cable, that block behind me, does not support drive-by cable. So we had to get a new throttle body. Basically what I'm getting at is that you have to understand how everything works together and you have to be willing to learn that.
What do you guys think about the pink transmission? The fourth mistake that I made is I tremendously underestimated the cost of this build. Money is a huge factor when doing a build. Once this thing is all buttoned up, I'm gonna do a complete and total breakdown of how much it cost me to build this car, and it's way over budget. I'm expecting between 3 and 4 times my original estimate. I don't have an exact number right now. I will do a full video on that later, but needless to say, you should definitely over budget. If you have a number in mind, you should add at least a couple thousand, depending on how deep your build is. There are tons of hidden costs when you are building a car. Maybe something breaks, maybe you decide to go a different direction with parts, or something doesn't run through properly so you have to get a different size. Cars for the most part are money pits, and building them is probably the king of money pits. So please overestimate how much you're going to spend. Don't do like I did where you completely under budgeted and financially you're hit blindsided. I would really encourage you to fully plan out all of your parts and all of your costs completely up front so you don't make a lot of the mistakes that I did. I spent a lot more money because I didn't plan properly, and that goes along with another point of just not having the right facilities. For example, I had to buy a U-Haul to move this thing a couple of times. If I had a trailer or a truck to tow this thing with, that wouldn't be an issue. But I just didn't plan forward and I didn't have those facilities available, so I had to spend extra money. Also, there were a lot of times where I was buying parts from the same supplier multiple times. If you can, for one, take advantage of all of those discounts, reward memberships, all of that stuff, but try as best as you can to buy this stuff all at once. I've spent too much money on shipping just to ship some stupid little bolt because we forgot about it or something like that. I wasted a lot of money buying from these places multiple times, so I just had to pay shipping multiple times in a row. A lot of people have those deals where you spend so much to get free shipping, but I wasted a lot of money on shipping too doing that.
The last major mistake I made on this build is I did not budget my time properly. This thing took way longer than I expected, and you should expect your build to take a lot longer too. I'm not discouraging optimism here. I'm just saying, unfortunately, there's a lot of roadblocks in the way, and this stuff never goes as smooth as we want it to. And not all of that is really in our control. There were a lot of times where I was waiting literal months for parts to come in. Right now, it is very challenging to get some parts, especially like the custom parts and items that are specific to your type of build, your fitment. Some of that stuff can take a long time because it all has to be custom made, and you really need to plan for that. I thought this build was gonna take about a month, maybe 2 months, and here we are about a year and a quarter later. So obviously, extreme under budget on time there. Also, understand how much time you're actually gonna have to put into this. Me, I work a full-time job, I run this YouTube channel, I have other things going on. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of working on my car all day, every day. I gotta put food on the table, I go to the gym, there's other things that I do in life, and it's just smart to budget around those things. So a good understanding of what time you're actually gonna be working on this thing, maybe you put aside, hey, listen, every Sunday, I'm only working on my car. It doesn't matter, but it's just good to have an understanding of what that time's gonna be for you. One of the things that I've kind of done to manage my time on the build and also just to try and keep things organized is I will only really work on like a certain section at a time. Right now, the next step for us is throwing the trans in. We have a couple small parts to put on and then motors going in. I have my whole brake system, brake lines, rotors, all of that stuff. It's here and it's ready to go, but I'm not even gonna start that project until we finish that portion. I just don't want things to get mixed up. I don't wanna lose bolts. I don't want parts laying around. Try to keep yourself organized and that will save you time as well. This next part kind of depends on how specific and how show quality you want your build to be. But what I noticed I was doing is I was really sweating the small stuff. For example, I was making sure that a certain tiny portion underneath the frame was beautifully sanded to the absolute max. I could have saved a lot of time if I just didn't sweat the teeny tiny details, because this build is going to be an off-road car. I bought this thing to use it and I'm building it to use it. It's going to get scratched, it's going to be roughed up, the bottom's gonna get run up by sticks and the paint's gonna be scratched. It doesn't matter that the paint is immaculate on an off-road car. I don't know if I'd really call that a waste of time, but there was a lot of times that I just spent too much effort on one teeny tiny small part and I had a whole car to build. Like, it was time to move on. Obviously, that's gonna be different for you or whatever your build is. For example, on my Corvette build, I'm gonna take a little bit more time with that. Like, I wanna do it right and properly, but on my Sandrail, if there's a few scratches here and there, I'm not gonna worry about it. My general advice would be to try to know what you're getting yourself into as much as you can. Expect the worst, but hope for the best. If you plan it out, budget your time, your money, it is an amazing experience. I love this thing. It was a little stressful at first, I'll be honest, especially in the financial area. I didn't plan for this thing financially and I was like, oh my God, I'm halfway through this build. I can't stop now, but I can't really afford to put more money into it. Thankfully, since then, I've gotten a better job, so I can financially afford to do this a little bit more. But this is a very rewarding experience. I don't want this to steer you away from building your dream car. I just want you to learn from my mistakes and make sure you do it properly. This was my first real build. Before this, the most I'd really ever done was a full bolt-on on my Mustang, which was pretty much long tube headers, full exhaust, you know, intake, tune. That's pretty much it. Nothing super crazy. And this thing, a fully custom build, taught me so much. I don't know how experienced you guys might be, but for me, I pretty much didn't know anything. I don't know a whole lot now, but I know much more than I did before I started this thing. So just like the learning aspect alone is so cool for this. The next steps on this build, we're throwing the motor in and we're gonna fire it up as soon as possible. Zach just buttoned up the fuel system today, so we should have fuel. We do need to run a couple other piping things, but for the most part, guys, you're gonna hear that turbo soon. In the comments below, guys, I wanna know what your dream build is. What is that build that you're thinking about starting? I think you should start it, and I really hope that you use this advice to do a better build. If you guys wanna see this thing ripping through the trails, you better smash that subscribe button. A like would be absolutely amazing to help out the channel. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I hope this video helped, and I also hope to see you in the next one.